Hi, I'm Izzy Neufeld, and I was a competitor on Kids Baking Championships and Chop Junior, and I am here as a judge for the Teen Pastry Lab's 2020 Bake Off. Let's get on to the judging. Number one is a muffin. It's a blueberry muffin, and we're going to judge on, right now we're going to judge on presentation, and there are three different qualifications: presentation, taste, as well as texture, and that's what we're going to be judging all 6 desserts on. And let's get started with this one, which is number one, which is a muffin. So we're going to just start by cutting into the beginning, and it does look like a good blueberry muffin at the beginning. The color is nice, but the top is really bland and white looking, but taste is more important than looks at this moment. But for presentation on this muffin, normally muffins and cupcakes, they both have cupcake liners. It's more sanitary, it looks a lot better, making the presentation go from probably a 3 to a 5. But since this one doesn't have a cupcake liner, it looks a tiny bit odd. Normally, it's just an ordinary thing. You normally see cupcake liners, which is odd. So I'm going to give them a 2 for presentation. The color's nice, but there's no cupcake liner, and it's a little underbaked, I'd say, because you'd see a little bit of golden brown, but the top is very white. Now let's try it. So I'm going to give them a 2 for presentation. The inside looks very nice, the color is nice. Yeah. For this muffin, I really like that. We're gonna start off with the good things that I noticed first. I really liked how there are whole blueberries, and the juices coming from the blueberries are really nice, and they add a little bit of a sweet tartness, which is very nice. But the muffin, there is too much flour and hardly any sugar. The only sugar I taste is from the blueberries, which is not enough for a muffin. Muffins are normally on a sweeter side, but this is very low in sugar. It kind of tastes a little bit like an underbaked pâte choux almost, with no filling, just raw pâte choux. It's too floury, and I think it's mostly made of flour and water and the blueberries, which is not exactly how you make a muffin. It's a little bit dry almost. I think that the over amount of flour is causing the muffin to become a little dry, dense, definitely very dense. But the good thing is the color is really nice. The blueberries add a little bit more sweet and tartness, which is very nice. Maybe next time, for a little bit more presentation points, sprinkle a little bit of coarse sugar on top, because normally the muffins at the store, they have those because they look very nice on the muffin. And also use a little bit of maybe a cupcake liner to help with the presentation points. The taste, I'm going to give a 5. It's dry, it's dense, it's very floury, and there's not enough sugar. The blueberries are probably the best part of this dish. They make the dessert much nicer. And for texture, I'm going to give a 3. The texture may be a little dense, but it's a little bit more airy. You can see it's a little airy, it's a little spongy, but it's still very dense and floury. So I'm going to give a 3. Izzy, and this is dessert number 2. Again, we're judging on those 3 criteria: taste, texture, and presentation. This is, I'm gonna guess, a cheesecake, probably a mint cheesecake, as it is in green in color, probably making it in Oreo mint chocolate cheesecake, but I don't know yet, I haven't tried it. For presentation for this one, I'm going to give it a 4. Looks very appetizing. Generally, it looks amazing. The crust looks very nice. It's a little bit uneven though. It's a little bit too small for the whole dessert, but that's a very small component to the 4 I'm gonna give this. It's definitely a very appetizing looking dessert. The chocolate, I'm going to guess, is like a ganache or a frosting, and I like how it drips down a little bit down the side, making it look very nice. The whole structure and size of it looks very nice. It's a very good size, but I'm going to give it a 4 instead of a 5 because there's no textural element to the actual dessert, as in presentation, like some sprinkles or some nuts that would just bring this whole thing together. Right? It's really only 2 colors. It's brown or black and green. But if there was a little bit of that light golden brown from a chocolate or some colorful sprinkles or something like that, that'd bring this whole dish together. So now for the texture, we're going to go and dive right in. So the cutting in is very nice, very smooth. You can definitely see the ganache is extremely smooth here. And it doesn't look like a cake at first, but I believe it might have some cake elements. I do not know. So we're going to start with the ganache part. It tastes very similar to almost a dark chocolate. I don't know if it's a ganache or frosting. They're very similar. There's probably a little bit of powdered sugar in this. It tastes very similar to a frosting on a donut. So for texture, that gives 2 points out of texture because the topping is very important. Now we're going to go on into cheesecake, whatever it is. The crust is probably going to be made of Oreos. I'm going to guess it's going to be made of Oreos or some kind of darker cookie. We're just going to go dive right into the bottom part. The bottom part's texture, extremely nice. It's rich in flavor. There's a creamy enough from the butter. I'm gonna guess that's in this crust. And there's a really creamy texture to the bottom almost. It's a little bit oily, but the texture on the bottom is nice and hard. You can see a little bit of the gleam from the oil. I'm gonna guess that's butter. But it does add some smoothness to that crust, and it's very nice and crunchy. Now trying to try the base. There is a middle layer in the middle, which I'm going to try that one first because you never know what's going to be in there. It doesn't taste like a crust. It's more like a middle layer of chocolate, maybe. I don't really know. So now we're going to dig right into this piece right here. Very smooth, like when you get it at the store. Very nice. Now we're just going to try a little bit of the whole thing. All together, very lovely. Very smooth. I would stand by what I said earlier. It needs some nuts or some crunchy element. The crust is nice, but that's not enough to give that textural element. Mostly this is a soft dish, meaning the chocolate's soft, the inside's soft, the crust is there, but there's not enough of it compared to the size of this whole cake to give a textural element. So the sprinkles or nuts might have given it that extra power. So for texture, the texture is lovely. The crust could have been a little bit harder, maybe baked an extra minute or two. The chocolate is nice. The inside of the cake is creamy. And overall, I'm going to give texture a 5. It's perfect, almost perfect texture. And I really enjoyed the texture of the entire cake together. And now it's up to taste. I'm going to give this one last small taste. The crust, there could be a lot more of it. It's very uneven, making the amount of crust there is relatively smaller amount to the whole cake. The taste, I'm gonna give it an 8. It just needs that nut or maybe layer of Oreos or something like that to give it that extra powerful textural as well as taste element to it. I could go for that creamy, nutty crunch or Oreo to go in this, which would make it perfect. And I'm going to guess that this was meant to be mint. I definitely think that it needs some improvement. It's not perfect. So I think I'm actually going to give for texture a 4 and for taste a 7. Judging on my whole criteria, it needs improvement, but it's relatively good. It's just missing that textural element, maybe a nut or an Oreo. So that's the only thing I can see to improve on this. And of course, maybe some topping on top to make it look better. Just a little bit of another color, maybe rainbow sprinkles. It might look strange at first, but it's a very nice textural element, or maybe a mint leaf on top. It needs some more color that's not really artificial looking. And overall, this is a very good dish. Now for number 3. The first look, it looks a lot like a cinnamon sugar muffin. Its aroma is very pleasing and very nice. So let's get on with the judging. Presentation. I'm going to be straightforward. The presentation is not the most unique or interesting or eye-catching dessert looking presentation. I do like that they put a little bit of cinnamon sugar on top. I think that this is a glaze as it's dripping down the bottom, but it's very hard, almost. I think maybe this is a day or two old. It's a little bit spongy, so there might be a little bit nicer, softer inside. I think that's just the outside. So I'm going to give this a 2 for presentation. It's just not eye-catching. So for presentation, I'm going to give this a 2. If I could give half, I believe I'd give a 2.5. But let's get started. It's a little bit hard to cut into, and the inside's very dry. It's very dry. There's a little bit holes inside there, meaning that it's very not airy. It's very dense. It's a little bit hard to swallow. It's a lot like a donut, but a little bit dense. The flavor is superb. Excellent flavor. The flavor of the actual muffin is nice. The crunch that you get from the glaze on top, that's a little bit dried, is actually quite nice. But it's very dry, dense, not fluffy or airy. And for presentation, I'm still gonna stay with a 2. It's very small. This is the amount of air you get to hold the cupcake. This part is the actual muffin top. Nowhere near enough to say that this is a muffin. The top is a little bit squishy. The top part, like the muffin top, is a lot softer than the bottom. It tastes very good. Very nice. I'm going to give this an 8 for taste. And for texture, a 1. Very dense, very dry. Maybe overcooked a little, but the taste is really nice. So, good job. Up next is number 4. Yeah, so let's get started. It looks very nice. Very lovely looking. There's some water just to refresh my palate, just cleanse it. When I grab it here, the sides are a little hard. The glaze looks very nice. So we're gonna just start off by giving it a little taste of that. I didn't expect to be surprised, but this is made of cream cheese or some kind of maybe marzipan. The texture of the frosting isn't very smooth, but the taste is very lovely. The bottom, definitely overcooked maybe a minute or 2. Very hard at the bottom. We don't know how the inside's gonna be yet. The bottom looks very nice though. It's a little bit more brown than I'd anticipate for a cinnamon roll. But the color, the whole chewy almost looks very nice. So we're just gonna, it's a little bit hard to cut into, so I'm just going to take a bite. Well, texture, very hard. 100% overcooked. The taste is really nice though. It's kind of hard to bite into. I'm going to try maybe like an inner layer. Maybe it's just the outside. It's not chewy like a cinnamon roll. I can compare this to a donut or monkey bread. It reminds me a lot more of like monkey bread or banana bread and a donut almost mixed together. The texture is not my favorite, and the presentation needs a little bit more. The frosting's too opaque. If it was whiter, it'd be a lot more appealing, appetizing. I think there's banana in this, as it doesn't taste like it's been sweetened with sugar, but more like bananas. For texture, I'm going to give this a 2. It's hard, very hard. Presentation is a 2 as well. Actually, I'm going to give that a 3. It looks appetizing at first. Just maybe work on the frosting maybe next time. And taste is a 6. Needs improvement overall, but relatively nice. So this is dessert number 5. Looks very nice. There's a sprinkle or dusting of powdered sugar, which is very appealing. Very nice. It looks like a flower, which means they definitely tried very nicely, and it's been accomplished and executed quite well. The inside of the apple is a little bit soggy. I don't recommend doing this with apples. They get soggy and it's not the best. The inside almost looks like a cinnamon roll with an aroma of puff pastry that's been baked very nicely. But yeah, let's get on to this. The dry dish. The apples are dry. The inside puff pastry is going to be dry. If this has a sauce on top, that might make it nicely. For presentation, I'm going to give this a 4. Needs some kind of glaze. And the apple was not the best choice, even though it looks very nice. There are some things you need to take into accountability. So I'm going to give it a 4. Overall, I believe it's just puff pastry and apple, making it almost like an apple pie except different. So the inside's a little bit undercooked. It's a little bit squishy, not just the apple, but the puff pastry as well. But the outside is nice. There's no flavor to the apples. I believe it's just cinnamon, and you don't really taste any cinnamon. The presentation might look nice, but the taste is what's most important. There's nothing as a filling that I can see. It's just the apples wrapped in the puff pastry. Very disappointing, actually. I believe this tastes a lot better than I expected it to. Well done to the person who created this. I do not know if you made this puff pastry yourself or you bought it from the store, but it's been cooked beautifully. The layers are amazing. You do know how to cook puff pastry, but this tastes a lot like a strudel, like an apple strudel you get at the grocery store. Those have frosting for a reason. It's not sweet enough. You just taste apple and puff pastry. No other real element. It does taste nicer than I expected it to. The texture is very nice. I'm gonna give them a 4 for texture. Not bad. Not bad. Needs maybe like a little bit of drizzle on top or a filling inside but just oozes out. But not bad. For taste, I'm gonna give a 7. Needs improvement. The apple does go with the puff pastry. Much better than I anticipated. Good job. But certainly not least is number 6, and it looks to me like a lemon bar. Overall, looks like a lemon bar. Very classic. The presentation, they were not trying. They could have done a lot with a lemon bar for presentation. Maybe dusted it with powdered sugar. Maybe put a little bit of a twist, like the zest of a lemon, the peel. They could have made that into a little candied peel and made that look really nice with some powdered sugar even. but it looks very bland. I'm gonna give it a 2. It's disappointing. The color is very vibrant and the crust looks very nice, but we're also trying for something unique, and this is just a classic looking lemon bar you wouldn't even find this at a bakery. They'd probably do a little bit more with it. So I'm going to give them a 2 for presentation. What? Let's get on to it. So it does not smell like lemon. Maybe a little bit more lemon on the top, I believe. It doesn't taste very sour. The crust is very nice. A little bit too much flour in that crust. The shortbread crust is a little bit bland. Not a good flavor for that crust. But wow. Instantly hit with that citrusy sour lemon flavor. Wow. Very nice. Executed it nicely. It just needs an extra sweetness from like maybe powdered sugar. It's very sour. Not enough sweetness in my opinion. Executed very nicely. There's nothing really unique about this though. Like maybe making a raspberry lemon bar or adding some special candied lemon peel on here. Would have made that from ordinary to unique and perfectly good looking. What I'm noticing is your crust. The sugar sank, making almost like a toffee candy at the bottom. So when you look at it, the crust, like the sugar there, and the crust. The custard is set very nicely, and it's very smooth. Very sour, but it just needs powdered sugar. Maybe some candied lemon zest on there. Overall, texture is a 3. Because the sugar means that it wasn't really incorporated into the crust that well, and the custard is set nicely and very smooth. So I'm going to give them a 3. Presentation is I've given them a 2. And for taste, I'm going to give them a 6. It's not bad. Not bad, but there's nothing unique about it. So now I'm just going to review everything, see if I want to change any of the points, and then I'll come back to you guys. Reanalysis. I'm going to declare, in my opinion, that dessert number 2 is the winner. There was a tie between 2 and 5. And I decided to give 5 a point less for texture, making their total instead of 15, 14, as the inside was a little bit undercooked, meaning that the temperature in the oven should have been a little bit higher. And they should have been cooked a little less. And then finished off on a lower heat. Overall, the highest point winner is 2 with a grand total of 15 out of 20. And I'm going to go over the total points. Number 1 had texture 3, presentation of 2, and taste of 5, making their grand total a 10 out of 20. Number 2, which is the winner, has a texture points of 4, presentation out of 4, as well as taste a 7, making their total a 15 out of 20. Number 3 has 11 out of 20 with texture being 1, presentation being 2, and taste being 8. For number 4, their points are tied with number 3, which at 11 out of 20, texture is 2, presentation is 3, and taste is 6. For 5, we were tied with number 2, but I decided to dock a point as the inside was a little bit undercooked. So texture was 3, presentation was 4, and taste was 7, making their grand total a 14 out of 20. And last but certainly not least is 6, making their grand total also 11 out of 20. Their texture is 3, their presentation is 2, and their taste is 6. Overall, everybody did a really good job. I told you guys how my opinion is that you can improve your dishes further on, but the winner, in my opinion, is number 2. Good job.